Have you ever noticed how your mind constantly jumps from one thought to another, like a non-stop conversation that never ends? One moment you are remembering something from the past, the next moment you are worrying about the future, and in between, there is an endless stream of opinions, assumptions, and distractions. But what if I tell you that all these mental fluctuations can be categorized into just 5 types? And that by understanding them, you can begin to master your mind instead of being controlled by it. Namaste. Welcome back to our series of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. In our last video, we covered the first 5 sutras where Patanjali defined yoga as the control of mental fluctuations and introduced the idea that when the mind is still, we experience our true self, and when the mind is restless, we become lost in its fluctuations. But before we can control the mind, we must first understand what it is occupied with throughout the day. Today we take the next step by exploring the 5 types of mental modifications called Vrittis. If we don't know how our mind works, how can we control it? That is why self-awareness is the first step towards inner transformation. As always, I will keep this explanation simple and logical so that anyone regardless of background can understand it. If you are ready to understand your own mind more deeply, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the upcoming videos in this series. Now, let's begin. The 6th sutra is Praman Viparyaya Vikalp Nidra Smritayah. This sutra is important because it helps us understand the nature of our thoughts. If yoga is about calming the mind, we first need to identify what's happening in it. This sutra tells us that all mental activities can be classified into 5 types. Here, Praman means correct knowledge, Viparyaya means incorrect knowledge or misconception, Vikalpa means imagination, Nidra means deep sleep, and Smriti means memory. These 5 categories cover everything our mind is occupied with throughout the day. Think about it. We are either trying to understand something correctly, that is Pramana, or we are misunderstanding something, that is Viparyaya, or we are lost in imagination, daydreaming, and assumptions, that is Vikalpa. Or we are in deep sleep, that is Nidra. Or we are recalling past experiences, that is Smriti. This means that at any given moment, one of these 5 is shaping our experience of reality. Now, why is this important? Because before we can quiet the mind, we must first observe it. Many people think that yoga means instantly silencing the mind. But if it were that easy, everyone would be self-realized. The truth is, controlling the mind is extremely difficult, so we must take it step by step. And the first step, becoming aware of where our mind spends most of its time. So, let's now explore each of these 5 types in detail, starting with correct knowledge. The 7th sutra says, Pratyaksh Anuman Agama Pramanani. Here, Patanjali explains the first type of mental modification, pramana or correct knowledge. In this verse, pratyaksh means direct perception, that is, seeing for yourself. Anuman means inference or logical reasoning. Agama means reliable testimony, which means trustworthy knowledge. So, correct knowledge comes from 3 sources. And these 3 sources help us know what is real and true. The first source is direct perception, which is what we see, hear, or experience firsthand. For example, you touch fire and feel its heat, or you see the sun shining in the sky. The second source is inference, which is logical deduction based on previous knowledge. For example, seeing smoke and knowing that there is fire, or you see dark clouds and infer that it might rain. Third source is testimony, which is learning from trustworthy sources like scriptures, teachers, or experts. For example, You learn about another country from geography books or a person who has been there. Overall, correct knowledge is essential because it helps us make accurate decisions in life. But not all our thoughts are correct. Many are based on false perceptions. Sometimes we think we know something, but we are actually mistaken. That's where the next sutra comes. The 8th sutra. Viparyayo mithya jnanam atdrup pratishtham. Here, Patanjali describes viparyaya, which is incorrect knowledge or misconception. Mithya jnanam means false knowledge and atdrup pratishtham means based on an incorrect perception of reality. This means mistaking something for what it is not. Let us understand this by an example. A classic example is mistaking a rope for a snake in dim light. We are actually seeing a rope in dim light and thinking it's a snake. Therefore, our perception is incorrect. Another common example from our daily life where we often misinterpret situations can be when someone doesn't reply to our message and we assume they are angry at us, when in reality they were just busy, or believing false information without verifying it. Misconceptions shape our emotions, relations, and actions. Much of our suffering comes from misinterpreting reality. Therefore, incorrect knowledge is dangerous because it leads to wrong beliefs, fears, and unnecessary suffering. Once we start questioning what is true and what is false, our mind naturally moves towards creating imagined scenarios and possibilities, which leads us to the next sutra. The 9th sutra. Shabd Gyan Anupati Vastu Shunyo Vikalpaha. This sutra explains Vikalpa, which means imagination or verbal delusion. Here, Shabd Gyan means verbal knowledge, Anupati means follows from, and Vastu Shunya means without an actual object. Imagination is when we think of something that has no real basis in reality. It is a creation of mind that does not exist in reality. For example, thinking of a unicorn or a fictional world, our mind creates it, but it doesn't exist. Worrying about future event that hasn't or may never happen, or creating mental stories about what others might think of us. Imagination can be both useful and harmful. Useful imagination helps us in creativity, storytelling, problem solving, and visualization. Harmful imagination creates unnecessary fear, anxiety, overthinking about things that aren't real. And even if we get lost in it, we lose touch with reality. When we experience too much knowledge, both correct or incorrect, and imagination, the mind needs a break and we need rest. And that brings us to the next type of vritti, leading to the next sutra, the 10th sutra. Abhav Pratyaya Alambana Vritti Nidra. This sutra talks about Nidra, which is deep sleep. Here, Abhav Pratyaya means mental state of absence. Alambana means support, and Vritti Nidra means the mental modification of sleep. This means deep sleep is a mental state where there is an absence of active thoughts, but it is still a vritti, a modification of the mind. Let's think here. Have you ever woken up and said, I slept so deeply I remembered nothing? Even though you weren't conscious, your mind still recorded the experience of deep sleep. This tells us that sleep is important for the body and mind, but it is not liberation. Patanjali reminds us that even sleep is a mental activity. And the moment we wake up, our memories return. Our past experiences flood back into our awareness, leading to the next type of vritti, that is, smriti or memory, which takes us to our last sutra of the video, the 11th sutra. Anubhut Vishay Sampramoshah Smritihi. This sutra describes smriti or memory. Here, Anubhut means experienced, Vishay means objects, Sampramoshah means retention, non-forgetting, and Smriti means memory. Memory is the ability of the mind to retain past experiences, like remembering a childhood event, recalling a conversation from yesterday, or bringing back the emotions of a past experience. Memory can also be both helpful and harmful. Helpful memories allow us to learn to grow, build skills, and make informed decisions. And harmful memories trap us in past regrets, traumas, or repetitive thought patterns. Now, we know that our mind is occupied by either of these at all times. What is real? What is false? What is created by the mind? A state of mental rest and past impressions. These 5 vrittis control our experience of life. The first step towards inner mastery is observing where our mind spends most of its time. Yoga is not about eliminating these thoughts, but observing and understanding them, reducing their grip, and ultimately mastering them. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments which of these mental modifications do you experience the most. And have you ever mistaken an illusion for reality? Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next episode in this series of the Yoga Sutras. Till then, stay safe, stay sattvic.